I chose 4 lies that media, parents, government schools, and the public as a whole tell to young girls and women to their detriment. Everything comes at a price. As rational men, we appreciate and accept our limitations. As boys growing up, we were inquisitive creatures. We tested the limits of nature and our own limits. Think back to when you were a boy. You wanted to explore the neighborhood, do risky things, dismantle things to see how they work, destroy other things to see what happens. Testing how the world works prepares us for when we get older. Our proclivity to push boundaries matured in order to assess our practical skills through competition. If we possess some intellectual acumen, we debate our friends or participate in some cerebral contest. Others of us competed in physical contests, usually sports, to test our physical prowess. We would set our own goals, involving ourselves in what interested us, learning, trying, then failing, repeating the steps, constantly improving. However we achieved this lesson of limitation, we learned, among other things, that actions always produce consequences. For women, though, this lesson was never fulfilled. The female sex doesn't have the same predilection as boys to test their limits. Despite what progressive academics claim, boys and girls have very different biological motivations. Nurturing, empathy, agreeableness, being beauty conscious are almost exclusively female qualities. Pushing boundaries is not. From these truths, we understand that women for all our existence have been the child raisers, and men have been the civilization builders. In a patriarchy, men restrained women's hypergamy through various, usually non-violent means, such as ostracism for promiscuity and out-of-wed births, scrutinizing potential male suitors, arranged marriages, managing and monitoring dating practices, are just to name a few. However, this restraint on female hypergamy no longer exists in the gynocentric Western democracies. Just look at this article. Just take a look. A pregnant, unmarried, naive young girl and her loser boyfriend sparked controversy after she was denied employment. They almost buried this locally owned restaurant by claiming discrimination on social media. I really would advise you to read this article. It demonstrates perfectly that we as a society no longer can ostracize women for their dumb decisions, because we cater to every woman's want and desire, no matter the costs. The practice of ostracism and other hypergamy restraints were abandoned with the advent of the birth control pill, the rise of progressive Marxism, and the sexual revolution. What do these 3 things have in common? The promise of a self-indulgent life without consequences. And with this, you get the modern Western woman, a unique species that only emerges when a civilization reaches its apex, when abundance pervades and society begins to cater to women's preferences, and when that same society allows its government to seize and counterfeit currency, when the civilization consumes to satisfy its impulses, damning the consequences. Remember, if you're a consistent viewer of mine, in one of my previous videos, I have explicated that women are of a hive mind and desire to be led by men. But what happens if women are misled, instead by society, promised everything without consequences? I chose 4 lies that media, parents, government schools, and the public as a whole tell to young girls and women to their detriment. Everything comes at a price. First, the easy one, free sex. The promise that girls can spend their 20s having fun, and then in their 30s are able to easily attract a man and then have children so late in their fertility. It is difficult for a woman in her 30s, her sexual market value lessened, to attract a decent man. Society lied to women about this. It pushed them into the fray, to be susceptible to STDs and unwanted pregnancies. Look at every movie that targets women as their demographic. About all of them claim that fallacy. The good-looking female lead bangs every available guy only to bag the guy she wants in the end, with no recourse. These movies fail to outline the truth that a woman, after years on the cock carousel, has a diminished capacity to pair bond, and divorce is more likely to be in her future. The second lie, the promise that a woman can go to college and establish herself in a lucrative, fulfilling career. Generally, in this economy, women who go to college amass sexual market value damaging college debt, only to graduate with a meaningless degree and no job prospects. Paired with the unregulated free sex, Women's sexual market value plummets during the best years of their fertility. So women have the right to vote, a right granted to them in 1919. The powers that be sell you that assertion that voting is a right, and everyone, men and women, should be able to exercise that entitlement. But it's not a right. It's in fact a privilege, paid for by a compulsory requirement to sign up for the draft. Early 20th century cuck politicians capitulated to less than 10% of the adult women population who petitioned for the right to vote. Most women didn't want the vote. Those traditional women understood the gravity of having that political license. However, society folded, giving women voting power for nothing in return. Naturally, following the concession for women to vote, the feminist movement advocated for women to enter the workforce. This had profound effects on not only women's psyche as a collective, but also the economy and Western civilization. The narrative in the media for years has consisted of lies to women that they are able to establish themselves in a career of their choice, then have children later on in their 30s. Lately, however, women are told to forego motherhood altogether in lieu of a career. To a woman, this can be damaging. They aren't built biologically to work 40 grueling hours a week, and foregoing motherhood can turn a sane woman into a spinster cat lady who will inevitably turn to government assistance because they don't have a husband or children to take care of them. I did a video on this topic in regards to Jenna Marbles. It's an interesting video. I suggest you go back and take a look at it. Yet women insist on getting a job, and the consequences for this choice is prolific and society destroying. Case in point, since the advent of women in the workforce, the government was able to prodigiously increase taxes, because the tax base increased, for all intents and purposes, about 50%. This new tax burden inhibits families from having children. It's just too expensive. Marriages suffer because both the man and the woman come home from work stressed. The division of labor in the household, in which a man works and a woman tends to the children in the house, no longer is practiced. Therefore, the man and the woman are stretched thin. Neither can focus their effort on one facet of their life, and the work suffers. Moreover, children are then abandoned to morally hollow daycares and public schools, so mom can go to a hermetic, air-conditioned, stale office to live out her dream as a wage slave. The gynocentric public schools and daycares are a breeding ground for bullying, bacterial and viral diseases, and female-centric education. Moral foundations and moral certainties from the dominant culture are not taught, leaving the children morally foundationless, hollow within. With the next generation tainted with this progressive shit, the cycle will continue, leaving the culture and society to rot from within. Does this all seem familiar? It should. We are living it. We are funding it as men through the insane progressive tax system in the West. And the saddest part of all this? Us men will be forced to clean up the mess in the end.